Hey everybody, Caroline here. In this video, I want to show you how to export photos and videos from your Apple Photos library with Photos Takeout. If you're not familiar with Photos Takeout, it's one of our favorite little apps. And basically, it gives you more options when you are pulling media out of your Apple Photos library than what you would have with the native user interface. Could you export straight out of Apple Photos? Of course. There are options for that, and you're welcome to do that. However, Photos Takeout is a great add-on for when you are doing that regularly so that you can preserve metadata and bring your photos out into structures in a more controlled and organized way. Basically, it cuts down on a lot of work for you. So I want to show you how to use this program. I'm very proud to say that I was one of the people that sort of got this program off the ground. You see, back in the day, we used to have a program called Photos to Disk. And it basically did the same thing, but it was discontinued, I think in 2018 or 2019 or something like that. So I reached out to App Initio, which is a great software company, and sort of filled them in on the void that we were all feeling in our industry. And with that, Photos Takeout was born sometime in 2020. And it has now a few years under its belt, so it has gone through a lot of updates, a lot of changes, and it has become a really robust way to export photos from Apple Photos libraries. And it's one of the favorite little tools that I recommend sort of for people who either want to create ongoing backups or who want to make sure that their photos are preserved, and stored elsewhere as well as in their database. So as a pro, it's really, really important for me to point out that whatever goes into a program has to have a way of coming out. When we see programs on the market that lets you pull all your photos and information in, but then doesn't let you extract it, that's a problem. And not to say that Apple Photos is one of those programs, but what goes in does not come out in as much of an organized way as I would like it. And if you know me, I like things organized. So hence Photos Takeout, right? So let's take a look at how to use this program. So you can buy it, first of all, by going to photostakeout.com. You can see more information about it there and see, what it supports and an overview of the features and all of that. You can also download it directly from the App Store. So if you go to the App Store and you search Photos Takeout, you'll see it pop up there. When you have the program installed on your computer, you'll click to open it, and you're going to load your system library. Your system library is the main photo library. It's the one that you have on your computer that syncs to iCloud if you're using iCloud. And in my case, I actually have more than one library, and I'll tell you why. It's because I teach a course called DPO Pro, the Ultimate Photo Organizing Masterclass, and I have my own personal library, which is my system library that has my own private pictures of me and my family. And then I have a demo library that I showcase to my students and I teach with. I don't want to experiment and showcase my own photos, if that makes sense. So what you are seeing here is actually my demo library. They're not actually my personal photos. They are demo photos for demo purposes. But it's important for you to know that you can switch between Apple Photos libraries. You can have as many libraries as you want on a computer. Only one per user can sync to iCloud. So for those of you who are pros out there, if you want to sync more than one Photos library to iCloud, you'd have to have different user interfaces on your computer in order to do that. And that's how we do it when we're doing pro work for multiple users. So make sure that you have your system library loaded. To check that, make sure that you go to Source and you check in the Pictures folder. By default, that is where your Apple Photos database lives. You can see here, I have my personal photo library here, and I have my demo library here. So the demo one is the one I've pulled in. It's the one that you are looking at. When you get to the navigation in Photos Takeout, you're going to notice that you have three different options for how you want to export your photos. You have years, you have albums, and you have moments. And they basically represent the view that is in Apple Photos. And then within that, you also have different ways of looking at pictures. So you have a gallery view like this, and then you have a list view like this. In albums, the gallery view looks like this, and here is the list view, right? So the big thing here is to understand the difference between, I guess, folders and albums. A file can only live in one folder at a time. It is a more rigid structure, and it's usually how we store photos. So imagine that you have this chronological folder structure right here with all the different years. Perhaps you might have subfolders for month and date and so on. That is a very permanent structure, and that is how we normally store photos. That doesn't mean that's how we look at our photos, right? So the way we look at our photos is usually through albums. And the reason we do that is because albums are based on context criteria and metadata. And so they are a lot more flexible. And a photo can live in more than one album at a time. So for example, if you had, let's say, an event photo with 10 different people in it, and you wanted to store that by person in folders, you would have to have 10 different folders, one for each person, and 10 different versions of that photo in order to be able to store it like that. In an album, you wouldn't have to do that. You could actually pull and group photos based on metadata, and you wouldn't need any duplicates. So an album is a lot more of a flexible way. It's usually how we group photos. You can think of it as a view. And that's how we solve all these metadata conflicts, and that's how we enjoy our photos in a much more robust way. So again, chronology in folder structures, that's usually how we permanently store the photos. That doesn't mean that's how we look at the photos and experience them. We usually do that through albums. So how do you want to export your photos? Well, that's up to you depending on how you're organizing. But for the pros, we tend to export with the folder structure in chronology because it's easier to know where you left off. It's also more organized, and again, it's based on storage. You do have the moments view as well, which represents what's in Apple Photos. So if that's important to you, then you can go for that view as well. That's not something I normally look at, but it's nice to know that it's there. So folders, I would say, is probably the best way, in my opinion, to export in an organized way. It depends on, if you've created just an album that you want to pull out for a project or something like that, that could be a different scenario. But in most cases, I would export with the list view in the chronology folder structure. All right, so with that said, let's take a look at your export options. Once you have the source library set, the other thing you want to do is make sure that you have a destination. So you can see here that I have created a desktop folder called Photos Takeout, and I've chosen that to make sure that I export photos to someplace that's easy and quick to get to when I'm showing you. But if you're doing a bigger batch, you probably want to do it to an external hard drive to make sure that you have enough space on your computer. Photos Takeout is really great for doing incremental backups, and we always recommend that you have a local backup of all of your files, either in the database, but preferably outside of the database, just in case it goes corrupt for whatever reason. It's just like a fail-safe sort of backup rule that we tend to adhere to. So, it's great if you can grab an external hard drive and just do backups of your photos library every so often, just to make sure that in case something were to happen to iCloud, in case a library becomes corrupt, then you actually have your photos intact anyway. So make sure that you have a drive that you can dedicate to backups. Usually for the 3-2-1 rule, we want one backup to be local. So set that there and make sure that that is your destination. When you come into your export options, you're going to see that you have the first drop down here for deciding what type of media you want to pull out. Do you want to pull out both your photos and your videos, just your photos, or just your videos? In this case, this is a demo library only with photos, so I could set it to just photos, but you probably want to pull out both photos and videos. And if you have live photos and all of that, then Photos Takeout is going to mimic the way Apple Photos exports as well. So if you want to have sort of a complete export of your library, then you're going to want to choose both photos and videos. If you're doing some specialized sort of export, perhaps for a project or for something else, then it's good to know that you can choose that here. The next button is probably the most important one. It is Keep Metadata. The metadata is all the information that you put into your photos. So if you've done work in Apple Photos where you've added either titles, captions, keywords, or so on, then you're going to want to keep this button checked because it pulls all of that information out with the photo. In most cases, what happens is that the program stores that information as non-destructive information, meaning that it doesn't want to affect the original photo. It wants to be able to revert to the original photo. And Apple Photos is one of those programs. It is a non-destructive program. So what it does basically is is just add layers of information so that you can revert to the original if you wanted to. And while that is really good, it sort of doesn't help you when you do want to have that information baked into your file. If you've put a ton of work into adding captions and all of that in your photos, then obviously you're going to want to save that, right? All that work would be for nothing otherwise. So we want to make sure that we export that alongside of the photo and keep that, in our archive. So make sure you click that button if you want to keep the metadata with your photo. You can also export unmodified originals, of course, just like you could in Apple Photos, and that's really good if you want to make sure that whatever came in is going to go out the exact same way. And what's really unique here about Photos Takeout is that we can actually do both here. So it's not going to change the format or ask you to convert your file format in order to keep the metadata. It's going to bring you out whatever the original format was, and if the metadata can be baked into it, it's going to do that. Otherwise, it'll come out with a sidecar file, okay? So that is a much more controlled way of deciding how you want to export files. If you have a bunch of different file types in Apple Photos, then that is a really good way to make sure that the integrity of the archive stays intact. With Photos Takeout, we also have an option for incremental exports. This is fairly new, but really exciting. And it is an add-on charge, yes, but it may be worth it for you. If you are, let's say, a pro and you're working with clients and manage their photo archives and backups on a regular basis, or let's say you are somebody who does monthly backups to an external hard drive, for example. Basically what this means is that Photos Takeout is going to remember where your export last left off. And it's going to let you pick up exactly where you left off without you having to remember where that was. So that can be super helpful, again, if you are doing recurring exports and you are maintaining your archive that way. So be sure to take a look at that. And what's really cool too about Photos Takeout is that it actually can pull down photos and videos and all that directly from iCloud without you having to download the high-res originals to your computer. In the past, you've had to sort of keep the originals on your computer in order to be able to export them properly. But Photos Takeout is actually really neat in that it can pull that down directly from your iCloud, obviously if you have your system library set. So let's say that I have optimized my devices because I don't have enough storage on my computer to keep my entire archive downloaded. Well, I can still use Photos Takeout and download all the high-res originals without having to turn on that setting in my Apple Photos settings. So if I'm optimizing, I can continue to optimize my device and still pull out all the high-res good stuff into a backup, right? So that's really neat. And it's going to do that in a very dynamic way so that you don't run out of space on your computer. It might take a moment longer, but it's going to be well worth it. So take a look at incremental exports if you are somebody who stores in iCloud a lot and you need to optimize especially, and you are doing periodic backups, which you probably should be doing anyway, of your Apple Photos library. It might be well worth your investment for that recurring subscription. All right, so let's take a look at just a quick export here so you can see how fast this is. And let me go to the gallery view so that it's a more visual view for you. Let me pick this photo right here from 1908. It's just one photo, so it's manageable, quick export. And I'm going to keep the metadata intact for that photo, right? So here I've chosen that. You can see up here it says one item, and this is the size of the export completely. If I click export, that is going to be super fast. You see how fast that was? Now I can go here to my folder, and here is that photo. You can see that the file name is intact. And if I open this in my preview and click on the information here, you can see that we still have the date-time original intact, as well as any of the IPTC metadata that was in there. So it came out the way it was supposed to come out. It is a dated folder, the file name is intact, the metadata is intact. So that's how easy it is and how quick it is to actually pull that out. If we go to the album view, then we have more options as well. What we can do here on exporting albums is that we can include the folders. So if you'll see here, it's located in the demo photo library. Basically what I have is a root folder called demo photo library, and inside of that I have all of these albums. So do I want to keep that folder or do I just want to pull out the album? In this case, let's include the folder. And also for ordered albums, that's a really neat option in case you have sequential photos organized inside of an album and you want to make sure that you keep that sequence. Then you want to click on ordered albums here. We have one more option in this program, and that is to keep the subfolders. So again, if you are exporting a nested structure, for example, and you want to make sure that you keep all of those subfolders intact, make sure you click that option as well. So I hope that gave you some ideas around how you can export from Apple Photos in a much more organized way than you otherwise could using Photos Takeout. Find them at photostakeout.com or on the App Store, and be sure to check out that new feature, which is incremental exports. So you download all of that good stuff from iCloud and keep it backed up and safe. And as always, if you want to learn more and you would like to get your own photos organized, or for your business or for your organization, be sure to join me in DPO Pro, the Ultimate Photo Organizing Masterclass. You can find more information on my website at theswedishorganizer.com/DPO Pro. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.